want to play for you what the Chuck Schumer, who, of course, is the minority leader in the Senate, had to say on this today. Take a listen.
We would hope, if there's a constitutional crisis, that our Republican colleagues would join us in thwarting the president from creating that crisis. We'll see.
I just want to say there are people who are watching that clip and they are screaming at the television, have you not been paying attention for the last 2 years?
It is Friday, November 9th, 2018. This is Raging Chicken's Out to Coop podcast. It's the midterms wrap-up edition. Welcome. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Each week I talk to our Capitol muckraker-in-chief, Sean Kitchen, about the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. This week's show, yes, we got the midterm election roundup. Was it a blue wave? Was it a blue trickle? Was it or was it oh my? We shall talk all about that. And should Nancy Pelosi be the next speaker? Not a controversial topic at all. We'll talk about that. And Jeff Sessions is fired. Let's make sure we distract as soon as possible from the election victories and get right back into it. Jeff Sessions fired. Matthew Whitaker installed by Trump as the acting attorney general. Matthew Whitaker first got his audition with Trump on the media machine, Fox News. And will Christie get the nod to come in as attorney general? We shall see. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the RBG, is back at work after falling down and breaking 3 ribs, where everyone across the country went, no! But the crystal of longevity that was in her robe is keeping her healthy. Or maybe it's that Michelle Obama workout that she does every day. Trump tells a black reporter that she's a racist for asking him to denounce white nationalism. Follow that circle around for a little while. It's like a dog chasing its tail. Women and minorities make history on election night. Unbelievable. Right? American Indian victories, Muslim women victories, and women in general, huge. The new emerging America majority is taking hold, folks. Lucy McBath, whose son was murdered in a Jacksonville gas station for playing his music too loud, defeated Karen handily. Alabama and West Virginia vote to strip constitutional protections for abortions. Yeah, I just didn't want to get us too far before we can start saying elections have consequences. Kavanaugh. And CNN's Jim Acosta stripped of his press credentials for a fabricated video karate chop. Welcome to the next step in the autocratic rule of the Trumpster. Today's PA focus, Tom Wolf and Bob Casey win their re-election bids by a landslide. It's a blowout fashion. Scott Wagner decides to use his time making tiny billboards for himself so that he can look at them, look at his election map, tell everybody it is what it is. Pat Browne barely survived his race against Mark Pinsley. I swear, I thought Pinsley had it for a good chunk, but in the end, Pat Browne's votes came in. Over 150 people showed up in Pennsylvania Capitol to protest the Mueller investigation. I should have mentioned this up top. There were protests everywhere last night. As soon as it was announced that Sessions was out and this new guy, that Whitaker being put in, Whitaker, who has been anti-Mueller investigation, like all over the place, that the calls went out and people showed up, and in small towns and large cities all over the country, more than 1,000 protests last night. We had Seth Goldstein out in Doylestown posting pictures. We had Sean that was out kind of in Harrisburg. We had pictures that were coming in from New York. We had pictures that were coming in across the state. It was absolutely incredible to see so many people coming out, wanting to keep the momentum and keep the pressure going, making good on a promise that people had made a while ago. Protect the Mueller investigation. In today's last call, China unveils the world's first AI news anchor. Word has it that it's a tireless worker with no aspirations to unionize. Just reporting the news. And Kim Stanley Robinson, sci-fi writer, all-around awesomeness, author of the Mars trilogy. He has a great piece in Commune called Dystopias Now. It's a great read about the role of utopia and dystopia, social progress, and political organization. Shout out to Jamie of the Majority Report for tweeting about it. Thank you, because it was an awesome article, and I think we should be paying attention. And some hometown news, my hometown, Utica, New York. Utica's FX Max Saranac Brewery launches a major expansion. Yes, the brewery that was the first to start brewing beer again after Prohibition is now expanding even further. Free Will's got a bottle release coming up on Sunday. Right, they're also going to be showcasing the Eagles-Dallas game, right, for those folks who want to come and watch it. But the new release is going to be Ollie. It's a sour brown ale. It's an oak cask. And this is something that they won a medal for, a silver medal at the 2018 World Beer Cup. It's a fabulous beer. They won that award for the Belgian-style Flanders Outbrewing or Out-Red Ale at the award, so you can come check that out too as well. I want to remind everybody, tune in to the Rick Smith Show on Free Speech TV this and every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can stream the show live at freespeech.org. You can also tune in on the Dish Network, DirecTV, or through the Free Speech TV app on Roku. And hey, everybody, the elections are over, and now it's time to get back to covering the movement. You want to keep the movement, the media and the movement, then you can support Pull No Punches, homegrown progressive media by becoming a member of Raging Chicken Press for as little as $5 a month. Simply go to patreon.com/rcpress and choose your membership level. Not ready to become a member? No problem. Just go to ragingchickenpress.org, click on the big blue donate button, donate whatever you can. And we've got past couple weeks, we've got some interest from some new writers. Haven't been able to really kind of follow through with that yet, just because of the election stuff and craziness. But you're going to start seeing some new voices in the pages of Raging Chicken coming up fairly soon. I am hopeful. So if you can help come support these new writers, these young writers, the new emerging majority writers, do so by going to patreon.com/rcpress today. Sean, man, the election has been over for, just a few days now, and it feels like it's already, the Trump administration is doing its best to try to make it fade into the distance. Yeah.
Where do I start?
I don't know. How you doing today? How you doing, Sean? Just want to know how you're doing.
I'm doing good. I guess I want to get this off the top. I'm gonna miss dunking on Wagner.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Are you? Because you seem like kind of like bored with it now.
Yeah, a bit. I mean, I've been doing this for like 4 years now. I moved out to Harrisburg 4 years ago, and I was there when he taped the camera to the fire extinguisher. I was there for his campaign kickoff. Got kicked out. I was there for a lot of things with Wagner, and now he's not going to be there anymore. I just don't know what to do.
I know. I mean, watching his like his whole political career go down in flames pretty dramatically. It's got to feel like a little bittersweet, Sean. A little bittersweet.
Yeah, more sweet than bitter, but there's some.
I mean, it's the comedian who kind of loses the prime inspiration for the material. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like it's.
He was the gift that kept on giving. You got to admit it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, like all fascists and autocrats, they rise. It is like the playbook of the right. Like they just they expand, they suck all the oxygen out of the room, and then they just consume so much oxygen where they just flame out, and that's what happened.
Yeah, well, at least the one thing that we got to give to him, at least though, he didn't disappoint in his campaign. If you're gonna get one last go, I mean, golf spikes. We'll always have golf spikes, Sean. We'll always have golf spikes. We'll always have duck shit on your pants.
The global warming stuff. The Earth is moving closer to the sun.
Wait. Can we just do a little best of? Okay, let's just do a little. This is a tribute to Scott Wagner. So just remember, this is the one thing that we're going to miss probably most about Scott Wagner, his famous lines.
I'm in the waste management business. Everybody immediately assumes you're mobbed up. It's a stereotype, and it's offensive.
And, that was, it was something, it was a recurring theme throughout his time there. But let's not forget those days when Scott Wagner thought fondly about workers.
So the workers that are down here...
Oh, wait, let me hear. Sorry, I thought about the workers.
So the workers that are down here in the hallways looking for work, I'd be happy to give them some numbers of employers in York that would probably pay wages somewhere between $12 and $15 an hour. But there are a couple things required. Number one, you would have to have an alarm clock, and you would have to be able to get out of bed. You would be able to have to pass a drug test, and you would have to have some work ethic. I don't go into fast food restaurants every now and then, but maybe I'll stop for a coffee. And periodically, you'll notice somebody behind the counter on a cell phone, either talking on the cell phone or texting, and that's clearly against the company policy. You'll look around and anywhere you go, there are younger workers with their pants hanging down, rear ends hanging out. They really don't care about their appearance. I don't care if you pay somebody $20 an hour. If they have a certain behavior, it's not going to change their behavior, and this is realism. We have given out so many government benefits over the last 5 years that we have more people riding the wagon than pulling the wagon.
Ah, yes, riding the wagon than pulling the wagon.
I mean, he said some blatantly racist shit.
Yes, he did. He did, absolutely. But look, that's not to be done by his incredible grasp of science, Sean. Right? Let's recall his moments of global warming.
The Earth moves closer to the sun every year. We have more people. Humans have warm bodies. So is heat coming off? We're just going through a lot of change. But I think we are, as a society, doing the best we can.
Yes, and and he gets to make those judgments. Why?
I'm smart enough to form my own opinions.
Yes, he'll be missed. Now, again, that's just a sampling. We of course, let's not forget about his positions on higher education, right?
Your system is done in 4 years. You are out of runway. You are out of oxygen. And the taxpayers are not going to continue to pump money into this system. The union bosses have made sure that everybody has been highly taken care of, and they're driving you into bankruptcy. So for those of you that think you're...
So there you go. I mean, it's just his comments on George Soros are not here. His young and naive comments are not here. There's only so much my soundboard can hold, Sean. It's like, I feel deeply, deeply saddened by the fact that I couldn't play them all for everybody.
Yeah, no, it's. I know my claim to fame was getting that young and naive comment on video. Yeah, and showing it to the world.
Well, let's not forget this audio that you got from one of his last meetings with his staffers. I think I don't know if it was after the duck shit one or not, but
Das war ein Befehl! Der Angriffssteiger war Befehl! Wer schickt Sie?
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, and you just left your cell phone behind accidentally, and then you just got that recording. So that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, man, I it's almost like I went to look for a new job now at this point. There's no more dunking on Wagner, so it's like,
yeah. We were going to save that one to the second part, but how can you not lead there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, let's get into it. Let's look at the midterms, and we'll believe me, we will talk more Wagner in today's Pennsylvania focus. But in these midterm elections, Sean, there was. I'll say it, on election night, there had been a lot of let's say hype is the wrong word. There had been a lot of an excitement about the possibility of a huge blue wave, right? And then on election night, got to be kind of late. I got sick on Tuesday, so I didn't stay up as late as I would normally do on election night. I love election night, and I had to go to bed. I felt horrible. But it felt like, oh my God, is
here we go again.
Yeah, here we go again, right? And I had that sinking feeling a couple times throughout there. But then, they eventually came and took the House. And now since Tuesday, as a bunch of these races have been, we're still outstanding in terms of being called, the numbers keep on increasing. So it looks better and better by the day.
Yeah, I mean, if you were watching if you saw the gerrymandering documentary on MSNBC early in the year, and it had Daley on there, the guy who wrote Rat Fucked.
Yeah,
and
David Daley. Yep.
David Daley, and he said this would have to be an election of epic proportions in order to take back the House because of the gerrymandering issues across the country. Stuff it would have to have been a wave for people to take back the House, for us to take back the House, because to overcome the voter suppression and overcome the gerrymandering. And I mean, for the most part, yes, I would say it was a wave because of all the House seats that were picked up. I mean, 35 seats have been picked up. Most people were saying between 25 and 30.
Yeah.
That oversees our expectations. I mean, the Republicans picked up an insane amount of seats in 2010, but I mean, for the Democrats to claw off their gerrymandering issues, I mean, it was important, and it was also important that they won states and governorships that they needed to win to roll back those gerrymandering issues.
Exactly,
because with the maps being drawn in 2021.
Right, and I think that right now is the 35 seats. I think that's even up further now from the last numbers I had. I was just trying to see if I can kind of check out what the latest is. Not seeing it quickly. If I see them, we'll come back to it. But the idea was the 35 seats. Ari Berman had a graphic on his show last night from it was based on the data from the Brookings Institute. They put together this this chart that says 35 seats. This is last night. It was not even nighttime. This is I think by 9 o'clock last night that number was up to about 38 seats. Okay, but if you look at the last time that the Democratic Party had net gains of that size, you had to go back, I mean, well before 1976. Yeah, basically. But even in 2006, you only had about 30 seat pickup right around in there. In 1982, right, that was the midterm after Reagan's election and the backlash. You had less than that. You had maybe 28, 27. So this is 38 seat pickup. And they're saying, depending on some of the races that shake out, this could go as high as 40. That's huge. I mean, that's not okay, we just barely captured the House. That is a significant gains. Not to mention that it wasn't just that they were gains. They were gains that fundamentally changed the composition of the House.
Yes. And I mean, also another thing, I haven't seen too much reporting on this yet, but maybe we'll see that soon. But voter turnout was through the roof, yes. Especially here in Pennsylvania. Some of these places, some districts were hitting 2016 level turnouts, and higher when which is significant. And one of the things that really I was keeping track of throughout the day was Next Gen had a polling measures at some of the college campuses to determine the intensity of the vote. So, one of the campuses they were at was Penn State main campus. In 2014, only 115 people voted at Penn State Main. By the time the polls closed, over 1,000 people voted at Penn State. Wow. And you saw these type of numbers throughout the country, where it shows you that when you put the organizing into this, you spend the resources, like we were saying for a while now. When you spend resources on getting students and engaging with the young people, the voter turnout's going to go up. So one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing is how much youth turnout, how much that increased compared to 2014.
Well, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but I think this is one of the reasons why I was so happy to see the kind of turnout last night. Right, for the protests about the Mueller stuff, and we'll talk about Mueller in a second. But I think that that is absolutely critical. The idea that the movements are going to continue to act, right, independent of what is going to happen to the Democratic Party. I mean, I think that is absolutely critical in order to kind of keeping people politically engaged, to say that no, we are the ones who are controlling the discourse. We are the ones who are setting the tone. We're not sitting back and waiting for some sort of Democratic Party leadership or something like this to tell us what to go. If anything, the Democratic Party now is our vehicle. We're not theirs.
Yeah. And there were some interesting candidates who won across the country. One of them was Lucy McBath in Georgia 6. Mm-hmm. Imagine remember the millions of dollars that was dumped into that race for Ossoff.
Yeah. And
at the Perry campaign, at the George Scott rally for the weekend on Joe Biden, I was talking. I didn't even know about this race, and my friend who's been doing a lot of good reporting for PLS reporter he pointed to this race specifically. He said, I hope Lucy McBath wins because it shows you that the Democratic Party is going to be more than just running boring middle-aged old white guys. Mm-hmm. And this race proved it. I mean, Lucy McBath, her son was shot and killed in Jacksonville, for playing his music too loud at a car. And the murderer tried to use stand your ground as a defense for this, which was clearly not the case. And she ran for Congress and she won.
Yep.
There's a lot of issues happening where you could say there's some takeaways from election night that yes, we still have a long way to go with racism and stuff like that, institutionalized racism, but we also are making gains within the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that you made a really good point there about the Ossoff race, right? Because I think that, and I've heard some commentary on this, which I'm really glad to hear, is basically saying that, okay, look, that push, the money that was put into that race, the Ossoff race, and we could, again, Ossoff was, as a candidate, right, had problems with him and things like this. I mean, he was that kind of centrist move, and there's all sorts of discussion about him. But anyways, but there was a lot of resources put in on the ground, right? And that was an active campaign that you had people that were mobilized for that campaign in ways that hadn't been before. And so, yes, he didn't win that race, right? But the infrastructure that he built was apparently, had an impact this time around, right? And I think that, I've always heard this. This is kind of like the lore that you hear of campaigns. Like if you want to actually get in the campaign in a particular area, in a particular district, then, whether you're talking about it as an individual campaign or as the party, that, you really need to be thinking about it as a 3-election cycle, right? In order to build capacity and build power and train activists, right, who are going to go out and do this kind of work. And I think that we see that. I mean, I think we cannot underestimate the how much Indivisible, for example, and the organizations and the local organizations that came out of the Women's March, right, and the DSA, right, and Next Gen and Our Revolution, about how much of an impact that those folks had on these midterm elections. And I don't mean to say look, these organizations, they steered it all. No, at the very least in training people in the political process and getting them excited about it, right? Because, and
also, these organizations got women, Will Bunch put a question up, who will be responsible for this if the Democrats pull us off tonight? And for me, it's the women who got involved in politics for the first time. Middle-aged, suburban, or educated women from the cities who were passive players in the political system and jumped in and got involved.
But it wasn't just this, though. It was also because, look, we've talked about this on this show, and this is kind of this. Anytime you're talking about what's happening throughout the South and you're talking about the Midwest, is that African American women have been the workhorses, right, of all these campaigns for a long time. And what was different in this election cycle, right, is a lot of those women who had been the backbone of those campaigns, they stand up and ran for themselves. Right. And they took leadership positions of campaigns in such a way that hadn't been seen before. And they won big. Right. And so, you cannot underestimate. So I think with women right across the board, yes, you had those white suburban women, right, who got involved with politics in ways that they hadn't before. But you also saw the emergence of kind of campaigns. And again, I'm really interested to see what kind of reporting and analysis comes out of this long term. But just in terms of the composition and who took leadership roles over the campaigns on the ground, and you're going to find, at least this is what I'm seeing so far in the reporting, is that women were in the leadership positions right across the board. Whether you're talking about suburban districts or you're talking about urban districts, and that's huge.
Yeah.
So, man, that was just, yeah.
I know, yeah. So, I'm looking right now. There's a really good article about, about turnout, youth vote turnout, and it's from Refinery 29, and so that basically said, the Center for Information on Research and on Civic Learning and Engagement, Circle, 31% of 18 and 29-year-olds voted in the midterms this year, representing a 10% increase from 2014. This is the highest youth participation in the last 7 midterm elections, making turnout voters for basically the highest youth turnout since this organization began doing exit polling on turnout in 1994.
Yep.
I mean, this again shows you that if you have organizations like Next Gen or the Democratic parties that's organizing college campuses, or groups like even small groups like Pennsylvania Student Power Network, like when you invest in those organizations, you'll get your return on investment.
Exactly. And this is all the more reason why the investment has to continue in those organizations, because they pay. I mean, again, this is the way it is. That's the way training works, right? Is that you train folks and then you put the investment in and then it has an impact, but it's going to have a key. It's like, again, it's like again, not to use the same thing I said for Wagner, but it's the gift that keeps on giving, right? Once you start training people, those folks become your next round of seasoned activists who train more people, right? So those folks are now going to be around as long as you keep them active, as long as you're actually doing things on the ground, like we're seeing, like last night. Those folks are now, they're going to be that much more prepared. They become that much more seasoned for the following election cycle. And so that's what we're going to see. And, again, you look at statements coming out from iRevolution, from DSA, from PA Student Power, Power Network. They are not looking at going away, right? This was not just simply an election. This is like an ability about building power on the ground. And I think that's here to stay for a while.
And even last night we saw it. I mean,
that's exactly
150 people showed up, 200 people showed up to the Capitol last night to protect the Mueller investigation. The protests, yes, say what you want about like the lefty critique of a bunch of liberals protecting some guy from the FBI, like investigating this, and make your lefty critiques and all, but like that's huge. Like this shows you that we're not going away after the midterms,
right?
I mean, like, yes, we won big and we're going to stick around and make sure we see this through the end.
Right, and there's something that I want to point out that that a lot of the the media reporting on some of the stuff from last night were not pointing out. Let me see if I can find this on my phone here. So I'm not going to find the first tweet. But basically, here's the deal, right? One of the things that here we go. Okay, so a while back, when it looked like that Trump was going to be targeting the Mueller and trying to kind of like crush the organization, things like this, part of what was happening on the ground is that there was organizing efforts to saying that, listen, will you sign up to basically say that on the day that if he tries to go after the Mueller organization, that you will show up, right? And so that had been done back in April or something like this.
I think August, right? 2017.
Was it that far? Was that long ago? Wow.
I think so.
Well, and so people signed up, right? And sure enough, I've got this text on my thing, right? That says, about register to vote, because it was connected with other things. And then I've got the, here it was. AG Sessions was forced out and Rosenstein removed from overseeing the special counsel. Protest today. Say rally to find yours, events and toggle alerts. Boom. That was right on my phone. Right, because I had signed up for that, and that was on like thousands and thousands of people's phones everywhere across the country. People who had signed up, and then when the call went out, they showed up. Right, I think it's so important, like, to emphasize that, because what the media is always going to do is going to report on these things as somehow spontaneous events that took place. And yes, there were a lot of people that just they heard this thing that was going on and they showed up. They didn't have that go on, but the fact is that was an infrastructure that was built over a year ago. Right, that is so critical to note that that was activated. It was still there. It wasn't forgotten, and then people showed up as in a response. That was amazing.
Yeah. So I guess moving on to our next.
Yeah, should we go there?
Yeah, I think we should go there.
All right. Why don't you start us off?
So I believe that Nancy Pelosi should be a House Speaker, and I believe that for two things. We don't like the lack of investment in the Democrats have put forward in molding young leadership is stunning. And like, if we are to have someone other than Nancy Pelosi, my fear is that it's going to be a blue dog Democrat who will just want more, that would want more bipartisanship with the Trump administration. And yes, I think that I think that you need someone up there who, yes, will try to get some sort of policy agenda through, but who also knows how to pick their fights in a tactical manner. And I feel like Pelosi is one that can do that.
That's all hate tweeting. Please go to @RCPress_Sean. That's @RCPress_Sean.
But no, I mean, like, we're going to need someone who will, carry out these investigations, right? Like, I see her being the figurehead, right, and the lightning rod. But, Maxine Waters, Elijah Cummings, John Lewis, these are all going to be your committee leaders.
Right.
Like, if you look at it, like how we, to make a mob analogy, she's like the leader, the godfather, pretty much. And you have your capos, or right, Kate, is that your lieutenants on the ground being the attack dogs.
If that's the way it works out. So Sean and I have been talking about this a lot since there, because I think that, look, for very, very good reason, let's just say, I'm going to say this, for very, very good reason, Nancy Pelosi needs to get out of leadership. Okay. And she, like, I'm trying to remember where I was, I know, Dave Weigel. This comes from Dave Weigel. And Dave Weigel made a really good point. He was on the Majority Report on Wednesday. And Dave Weigel said, look, she's got the same kind of problem that a lot of baby boomers in politics have, right? Is that they think that, like, they're the ones who knows what to do, that nobody else could do it as well as they can. So they're going to have to be the ones that do this, right? It's both, on the one hand, it's an overblown sense of their own kind of capabilities, and an underestimation of kind of like the capabilities of others, right? And he was talking about this as, seeing this in kind of leadership. And this is not just in politics, but right across the board with baby boomers. And so Pelosi is that. And Pelosi, if just in terms of the technical workings of power, like how you actually manage legislation, how you keep your caucus in order, all that kind of stuff, how you actually put forward votes that'll win, right? She is no doubt got high skills on that score. The problem is that Nancy Pelosi has also been the leadership during the time, like, for example, during the Obama administration, when we saw massive losses on state houses and across the country, a lack of new leadership in the Democratic Party, right? We saw, for example, the decisions not to put forward bills in the House for, card check, for example, union card check. We saw bills not to put forward for Medicare for all and that kind of stuff. So she's been that kind of, that force that, needs to move aside, because basically the people that are coming forward have a different kind of agenda and new energy. Having said that, the kind of next step here is, so what do we do at this point? Right. And my thought, and that's what I was talking to Sean about this on the air ahead of time, is like, look, I think the party needs to get together. Now, the Progressive Caucus, for example, was reporting on this yesterday in The Intercept. And I don't think this has changed. I was looking today early before we went on. But the leaders of the Congressional Progressive Caucus are not yet saying whether they're going to support her leadership or not. Right. And what that basically means is that she is going, in order for her to maintain and become Speaker of the House, she has to have a majority of the full House. Right. So we'll see if that's going to happen. We don't know if it depends on how big that caucus looks and how much people affiliated with the Progressive Caucus want to throw in with them. We're going to see what happens.
And this is where they should be cutting deals.
Well, exactly. Exactly.
And this is, if you're in the Progressive Caucus, like, yes, we will vote for you only to say you give us these committee positions, you let us do this, or you install one of our members, right? You pick a member in that caucus into leadership and groom them to be the future leaders of this party.
Yes, and so this is exactly where I'm going. Like, this is my thought is like, look, the Progressive Caucus, they should be building allies right now in the party and say, look, we as a party, the way that we have operated as a party has been solely on seniority, right? And Sean has talked about this extensively on the show, right? And this is a failing of the Democratic Party, that it just passes on leadership, because basically it's going to pass it on to who? Another baby boomer, right? Who's just going to be waiting in the wings. And exactly what Sean says, it's going to be some sort of blue dog Democrat or someone who's just, they put in their time, but are not going to reflect the coming majority. And the messaging should be from those, I think the Progressive Caucus and kind of their affiliations, look, we have to start doing new things. So Pelosi, here you go. We need you right now, right? So just keep this house in order. And I've got some ideas about what they should say too, but keep this house in order. And we're going to prepare that next generation to take over your position in 2 years, right? And so you are going to have a choice at the end of these 2 years, right? One, ideally, you're going to close out your career as Speaker of the House and saying, I have done this as the Democratic Party. This is what I've done. And now it is time for us to pass on and recognize the new leadership that is coming forward and pass the baton past your baby boomer pals, right, to that next generation of folks that are coming up, because that's what we need. And then if she doesn't want to do that, they can say, then you're going to have a fight and there's going to be chaos on the floor and we're going to win. We're going to oust you. All right, that's the way that it's got to be, and that is not. I don't see that as kind of say disrespecting the legacy of Nancy Pelosi in terms of what she's been able to do. Right, absolutely, she's been like historic in what she's been able to do in so many different ways. But we have to recognize what we need for going forward, and so this is not a kind of an argument to say that good, bad, or evil, or so on. The other problem with this, or the reason, well, this can go two ways. The other problem with Nancy Pelosi staying there is because what Trump is extraordinarily good at doing is making everything about personalities, right? So unless the Democrats have a very strong agenda and strategy about what they're going to do, what we're going to see happen and what we're going to see play out, it's going to be about personalities and not policy. Right, and that is dangerous. And if Pelosi falls into that, kind of wants to go back and forth and spends too much time with Russia, and not enough with Medicare for all, free college tuition, and things like this, then we're going to see into trouble, and then people are going to pull the plug on her early. That's kind of where I'm sitting with this.
Yes, and that's where we should. I see her being the House Speaker for this term. Like right now, she's simply because I feel like she has the leadership qualities. Now, do you want a Steny Hoyer to be Speaker of the House? We talked
about this, right? It's not an either or, right? I mean, it's not an either or though. It's not like it has to be Steny Hoyer or Nancy Pelosi. I think it's a false choice. I think that, but let's say for example, like this: what if? Right. I've got an open mind to say if we've got someone who kind of comes forward who's got all those skills that I'm not thinking of in my head right now, that's got that level of competence, I'm open to hearing that happen. Right. I'd like to see it. I just think like organizationally, you don't want the movement activists to kind of suddenly have to kind of deal with the machinations of power right now. You want them to consolidate their power inside the party, right, and continue to mobilize and organize. I think Nancy Pelosi can do a very good job as long as she's taking direction from the party and not deciding that she's going to set the agenda and tell everybody else what to do.
Yeah. I think also possible. I see it as grooming the next generation.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you're going to have to do that. And it's you can't just throw some young progressive or someone like the lady from Oregon or Seattle, Washington.
Pramila
Jayapal, yes. You can't just throw someone like that who is a movement activist, a progressive movement, party movement figure into a role of leadership when it's so much more than just controlling deciding on which bills come up. I mean, it's a lot of it has to do with politicking and keeping your caucus in order and building and gaining that respect.
Right.
Because if you put someone in the Speaker of the House who has no experience in doing this and who cannot keep the caucus in line, then you are going to then Trump's just going to steamroll you.
Right. Right. So now that being said, so what do you do? Right. And this is kind of stuff. If I had to give my advice, right. But, who the hell's going to listen to me? Right. But if I had to give my advice, is what the Democrats should be doing as a policy right now is again, take your cues, at least from a process. What works is when you are pushing forward for policies, right? Now, what I can't stand what the Democrats will do so often is that they'll say well, this is not exactly going to happen, so therefore we can't do this. It's such a freaking limited way of kind of thinking about politics. The idea is you get the opportunity to set an agenda. So there is nothing stopping now, right? Nancy Pelosi and then bring together a bill to put forward for Medicare for all.
Exactly.
Right.
And then since this election was mandated on healthcare.
Right. Exactly.
Healthcare was the mandate.
Exactly.
And you just, let's Medicare for all. Boom. That bill got half or almost all of the Democratic caucus to sign on to it last year.
Exactly.
Now it's time to put that on the floor and hold these people to a vote. And now go after the Republicans who don't want to vote for it.
Right. And so for the Democratic mindset that says well, look, it's never going to get through the Senate. You're missing the point. If that goes through the House, let's say that goes through the House, you get the House majority to vote forward for a Medicare for all bill, right? And then you're demanding that the Senate or you're encouraging however language you want to put it. Then it goes to the Senate, right? Senate, we want to pass this bill, and the Senate doesn't do this. You hammer the leadership of the Senate for not giving Medicare for all. Same with free college tuition, right?
Or card check legislation.
Right?
Minimum wage, raising the minimum wage.
We should see in the first term of this new Congress, right, coming in, they should be putting forward the big
Medicare
idea
for all, $15 an hour minimum wage.
Boom, 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 right? We know what those items are. We know what the ones that campaign on and ones that were kind of popular and successful across the country in terms of the campaign. Those are the ones that you come out of the gate. And look, the Republicans were smart about what they did with Obamacare, right? What was 70 plus votes to repeal and replace Obamacare or repeal Obamacare, right? You've got all those votes. They knew that was going nowhere. Right. And they never had a plan to replace it whatsoever. Right. The Democrats can one up that. They can basically say, OK, look, it's a snowball's chance in hell that's going to get through the Senate. You never know. So much chance in hell. But we're actually, instead of doing what the Republicans did, we're actually going to have a plan that's workable. Right. Our policy and the bill that we're putting forward is going to be for something, not just against something, is going to be for something. That will keep people engaged. And imagine this, if you have 2 years filled with people that we saw like Indivisible, the Women's March, Our Revolution, DSA, all these people continuing to show up at their senators' offices and their representatives' offices, demanding that they vote for Medicare for all, demanding they vote for free college tuition, for a $15 minimum wage. I mean, these are big things. Right. And I think that is going to be that sets the stage for 2020. You basically would define the entire
party platform,
the party platform. And you're defining the discourse of what that entire election is going to be about. Because I think the Trump train is that is not going to be enough for the next round of election.
And you look at it. I mean, what did Democrats do in the final 2 months of the election? They got off the Trump train and they're like, oh, look, we're going to campaign on health care.
Yep.
And you had Republicans running scared about their health care votes.
Exactly.
And now it's time to hold them to it.
Exactly. And I think, look, this is a historic opportunity, right? And I remember watching. I remember the sinking feeling of watching that first year of the Obama administration just slip away, right? And not having really bold initiatives put forward, right? That building off that election victory, and just watch it just kind of move into some sort of technocratic, I got this kind of garbage. Right, that people just sat back and said, yes, he does get it. No, we've learned our lessons now. People are organizing, and now we have to pressure the Democrats to put forward this kind of legislative agenda because it is going to pay dividends we're not going to have this opportunity again for years.
And as fun as it is to destroy things, it was pretty fun destroying Scott Wagner and stuff like that, or destroying legislation and making sure stuff doesn't get to the floor. It's time we go on the offensive.
No, and this is but look, the only justification in my mind, the only justification, right, or the only, no, not the only, the long-term pleasure of destroying something like Scott Wagner, or Donald Trump or these Republican like hacks, right, is that kind of like in its place that you can make something more beautiful live. Right? The idea of kind of throwing this shit into the compost bin is because you can use it to fertilize the ground and grow good stuff. Right? It's like, it's not destruction for the sake of destruction. And that's what the Democratic Party's got to get through their heads. The Republicans just want to destroy, period. Right? We have to be, it's a cliche, right? If you want to make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs, right? Well, we've just broken a bunch of eggs. It's time to make the freaking omelet, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't just have to be an egg omelet. We could put cheese and peppers and sausage and shit in it, right? Not shit, but you know what I'm saying? Spinach, right? Real good stuff, right? And that's the whole idea. I mean, I can taste it practically, but it's going to mean that again, I look. There's been a lot of people in this last election cycle that have been a hell of a lot more active than I have, I tell you, in terms of pushing it forward. And I feel like I'm taking their lead right now, right? I mean, I'm following the movement right now because it's like, I'm astounded at the amazing leadership that is moving forward. And I am all for about kind of getting out of the way and let the kind of generation of people that are the organizers, let them lead and help wherever I freaking can. Because, man, I'm learning every day about kind of like how you do politics by watching these folks do it. And I think that, the Democratic Party should do exactly the same, is let the base, the people who are skilled of kind of establishing a narrative, establishing the kind of a legislative agenda, learn from them, take from them, and push forward that kind of platform, because you're going to get nothing but support from below.
Yeah.
But so I mean, I think so that that's where we go. I think we should also say, this just quick note on this too. It was historic last night, and election night, just in terms of number of women and minorities who were elected. I mean, I thought that was absolutely astounding. The first ever two kind of like American Indians kind of elected to office, and that. Incredible. We should also give it a shout. You see, like in Oklahoma, they flipped the seat in Oklahoma from the reddest. They flipped
a couple seats in Iowa.
Yep. And Oklahoma, the reddest of red, where the Democratic Party wouldn't even get involved. They flipped a seat there. It was absolutely incredible.
Chris Kobach went down.
Chris Kobach went down. Scott Walker went down. And shout out to Brett Banditelli for reminding everybody on Twitter, like before everybody starts kind of like talking about 2020, can we please dunk on Scott Walker for a little while? Can we just revel in that for a little bit? The guy, let's remember, Scott Walker, that was the launch of the Tea Party right-wing Koch brother funded kind of assault that kind of spread like a virus across the country, and now he's gone. Right, that's
we
huge.
Stave that off here in Harrisburg.
Yeah, that's huge.
Like, we've been able to stave that off for the past 7 years. It's, Democrats will have control of drawing the maps here in Harrisburg and so many other chambers throughout the country. It's.
Yeah, let's run through it real quick. I mean, here it is, right? This is how big the victories were. Because the Democrats also, and again, not Democratic Party, these are Democratic activists who got this message and learned from it. Is because people took state politics seriously again and mobilized at the state level. Like, remember the Tuesday with Toomey people who were there every single week organizing around state issues? Same kind of people across the country. So in New Hampshire, Democrats retook both legislative chambers. That's huge. Colorado's Senate flips from Republican to Democrat. Huge. Connecticut's Senate sees Democrats take control after a split. Minnesota's House changes to Democrats. Maine's Senate flips, and a Democratic governor wins to give the party full control in Maine. Remember Governor LePage, baseball bat LePage, right? That whole kind of thing, that is gone. Right, we saw that Susan Collins, like her approval rating dropped by 9 points, right, after her Kavanaugh vote, and now we see Maine in kind of Democratic control. In New York State, substantial gains in New York State. Now Governor Cuomo, the centrist Democrat, who's pitted one group of conservative Democrats and Republicans against the Democratic Party in the state, right, now loses that. His people are gone and out of control, and now you have a state house that is more Democratic, more progressive, and they have a majority that's going to be independent of Governor Cuomo. That is huge, right?
Yeah, and you look at it, like there's not a single Republican in the whole entire New England area representing the House.
Boom, 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 right? And
you had seats in New York City that flipped, that, in Staten Island. One of the
Staten
whitest.
Island. I mean, come on. The race. I mean, Staten Island is known to be one of the most kind of the racist. It's like the kind of like your shameful uncle of New York City, right? The guy who comes to Thanksgiving and kind of starts like using racial slurs and stuff. That's Staten Island. That's the reputation of Staten Island, right? And Staten Island, man, nope,
Flipped. And then Delgado won in the Westchester area, or like the upper, like the upstate, like outside New York City.
Yep.
In a spot that he shouldn't have won. It's.
Yeah, and you look at Delgado's race, right? And Delgado won, right? He won because
this Rhodes Scholar that they tried to make him look like a New York City rapper.
Yeah, and you know what? He just went right around that, went right to the issues that mattered, where people were hurting, and he spoke directly to what was going on. Boom, right? It's fantastic. So, I mean, look. I understand there's lots of things that are out there that we can nitpick. I don't want to belittle it. There are critiques. There's important things that are going to have to be rectified, that we're going to have to think about, and kind of we see. There's no doubt that we saw racism, like rampant racism, have an effect on this election. So let's not forget about that. But let's not also forget the fruits of the labor of all the people who have been organizing for 2 years and more, right? And the victories that we have here, because I'm telling you, to have a net gain of seats in the House of like 38 seats, and that not having seen that kind of net gain so big since Nixon, right? Yeah. That is no small potatoes, folks. And yes, like the Democrats did not take the Senate, and that's going to mean, as Mitch McConnell has already indicated, that now we're going to have more judges being appointed like crazy. But thank God, please, like send your energy, prayers, whatever, your herbs and spices to RGB to make sure that she can hold on for another 2 years. That scared the crap out of me to find out she broke those ribs. But there she is back at work. Last thing we should mention before we go to a break is that, we didn't talk that much about a bunch of other things, but what we saw this week with Jim Acosta and the Trump's attack on the media, like literal attack on the media, the fact that he got his press credentials kind of stripped from him, and the press secretary was shopping basically the Alex Jones-esque video about the karate chop that Acosta did, but he got his credentials pulled after confronting Trump at his press conference. We're going to see more of that. So as much as this is really good, we also know that there's that the right is going to keep up what it's doing, and I think Donald Trump is going to be going on the attack. So celebrate, get some rest, and let's get back at it. Anything else from the national score, Sean?
No, I'm good.
All right, man. All right, we're going to go into the Pennsylvania Focus. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. We'll be back right after this.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1935. The Committee for Industrial Organizations was created by 8 unions as part of the American Federation of Labor. United Mine Workers President John L. Lewis was the driving force behind this new committee. His aim was to organize mass production industrial workers as opposed to focusing on those in the skilled trades. While the American Federation of Labor had included some industrial unions, the craft unionists were the dominant force in the organization. The Great Depression had hit industrial workers and their unions hard. Leaders from the heavily affected unions pressed for more support from the AFL. In response, the AFL did authorize organizing drives in the automobile, rubber, and steel industries, but they gave little financial support or effective leadership to those unions. Matters came to a head at the AFL's 1935 convention when mine workers president John L. Lewis punched the president of the Carpenters Union. Afterwards, Lewis called together various industrial union leaders, including Sidney Hillman, head of the Amalgamated Clothing Workers and Harvey Fremming of the Oil Workers Union to discuss the creation of the CIO. In its statement of purpose, the CIO declared its aim to encourage the AFL to organize by industry. However, the AFL's leadership was not sympathetic to what they saw as an internal rivalry. In 1936, the AFL suspended all of the CIO unions. This led to the industrial union's breakaway from the AFL to form a rival federation. The CIO changed its name to the Congress of Industrial Organizations. By 1938, the CIO had amassed 3 million members. The CIO ran successful organizing drives in auto, mining, meatpacking, and steel. The two union organizations finally remerged in 1955, forming what is known today as the AFL-CIO.
Welcome back to Raging Chicken's Out the Coop podcast. Here we are with our PA focused, and Sean's going to take us right inside the Biden rally.
Yeah. So last Saturday, Joe Biden was in Harrisburg on behalf of George Scott, who ultimately lost his race by like a narrow margin. And I was able to get press credentials for that. And a lot of national media was there. And like McKay Coppins was there from The Atlantic. I had no fucking clue who he was. We started talking, just like...
It's great. Great to admit that up front, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. No, like, okay, so I don't have.
I was just talking to this dude, like, it looked like he had a suit on and shit. So I was like, I'll talk to him.
But like, so he came up to me, he's just like, so we were talking, explaining to him what I do with the Raging Chicken Press and all, and he thought the name was pretty cool and wanted a little bit of backstory on that, but we went into the conversation, and he we're talking about like, I've been out here for 4 years now, and he asked like, is this crowd a Biden crowd or is this a Bernie crowd?
Says the person who's never set foot in this area before.
Yeah. So I said it's both. Like, I was like, look at the crowd. You see people wearing Just King hats. You see a lot of activists here. You see a lot of like white working class people here for this rally. I ran into people who I bartended for at Pizza Boy, and like who I never talked politics with them because they were from the West Shore, and mostly those are Republicans. But like people are like, no, fuck yeah, we came out for Joe Biden to go see Biden, and he has a pull. But I said I don't see this being a Biden crowd or a Bernie crowd. I see this people are pissed off. Mm-hmm. And it's more or less like this is the first time in years that Democrats have ever had a say in central Pennsylvania politics. Right. Since the 60s that we had a legitimate shot of getting a congressman representing York County or Dauphin County. Instead of thinking about that, like look at the work that's been going in regionally with, the indivisible groups, the Tuesdays with Toomies, the grassroots movements. I mean, like these are the people who kept this energy going. And like, yeah, sure, there would be a race out here in central Pennsylvania with the new maps and all, but these are the people who are knocking on thousands of doors a day, who are coming out and working and putting in this groundwork. And it was an interesting conversation because they wanted like that like Beltway, Acela, right, Expressway like read of things. I'm like, no, this is like people are pissed off out here, and it's like it's the first time we've had a say in things in decades. Yeah, and it goes to the point where Democrats should be organizing these rural areas. You saw it like yesterday with the Mueller protest in the Capitol. I mean, you had people from Pottsville, the Schuylkill County, York, Dauphin, Lancaster, and Perry counties at this rally. Like, think about like those are the areas that people like just write off as conservative land.
No, I mean, you look at the gains, like what the Just King campaign did, right? You look at the George Scott campaign. I mean, these were no Democratic Party official in the state of Pennsylvania before would have thought this was even kind of within the remote realm of possibility.
And even though that like Scott Perry won the other day, in my opinion, this spells the beginning of the end for him. Like this spells the beginning of the end of his political career in central Pennsylvania. I don't see him surviving. He may survive in 2020, but I don't see him surviving after that. He's not going to moderate himself in a district that is turning more blue. And once like the Camp Hill suburbs, or once the West Shore suburbs of Harrisburg, turn blue, which is happening, it's going to happen. And once it happens, they're just never going to get the seat back.
Well, and let's say, and once you have like strong candidates emerge that want to challenge them and have an infrastructure of activists who are prepared to do the campaigning, right, and the support, fingers crossed, right, of the party, right, to get behind those races, then that's going to have pay big dividends. And and I think that with Fetterman getting elected too, and with Fetterman's whole approach to the state, right, the idea about that we're going to campaign everywhere, right, we're not going to kind of like use this like shorthand of just we Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and the rest whatever. No, that we're going to be in all these communities just like he did in his campaign. That bodes well for the future. Yeah,
and Shanna Danielson, who listens to the podcast, she was at last night's rally. A lady from a woman who ran from Perry County was outside at the rally speaking, and they were both like, "Yeah, this is the first time like a Democrat has run in these areas in years." I mean, and they got like 30% of the vote, which is not a lot in the big scheme of things, but it's the highest percentage of votes that a Democrat has ever gotten in these communities when running.
Absolutely.
And it's yes, you're going to lose these races, but you're also going to be shaving votes off from the Republicans in these areas.
Yeah,
because there are Democrats who live in Perry County, there are Democrats who live in York and Schuylkill County and stuff like that.
And this is a shout out to Shanna Danielson too as well. So depending on what you're doing politically and stuff like that coming forward, you're going to be hearing from me about maybe getting some more involvement with the podcast and maybe even some writing and stuff out in that area. So expect me to be bothering you because I know you're listening. Anyways, I didn't mean to disrupt, but she, her campaign too was freaking amazing. She's like, yep, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, and there's organizations like Flippable and Run for Something out there who are giving these state races more attention and more like free training on how to run a campaign, where the Democratic Party would not be really that interested in doing this thing.
Right, and this is like our friends who are inside 254, Amanda Morris and Colleen Clements. They actually organize some of this stuff at Kutztown University's campus, right? We have Chris Ayala, a former organizer from ABSCUF, who would kind of help them do this too as well. And you saw that kind of work of the kind of like, yes, we're going to get together these trainings at a very local level to start training that next generation of leadership. That was the kind of thing that was happening all over the state. And here you go, man. This. I'm telling you, there's so much to be so excited about in the state right now.
Yeah. And I guess I just want to get that out of the way first before we.
No, cool. Let me ask you this: we didn't talk about this too much before, but I think one of the stories that you hear it mentioned a lot, but the top of you mentioned like McKay Coppins kind of look, he wanted the kind of like the Acela version of this, right? As you can see, he brought in his kind of like categories of like, well, what do we know? We have Bernie, and then we've got this kind of way of framing it, Bernie and Biden, because that's the way the world thinks, and no, that's not the way it happens. But one of the things that would get mentioned, but I don't think it's got enough mention, because they said, look, Pennsylvania last time voted for Trump, and this time it seems to be kind of voting back. But the role of like what a Democratic controlled Supreme Court being able to redraw those district lines, that was huge. Now, again, that didn't affect the state races. I get that. But man,
when you have people running competitive races, like, so I was talking, gerrymandering is a form of voter suppression.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? It is voter suppression. When you have, when you draw races lines that are 65-35 or skew so far to the other side, it depresses people from coming out to vote. But like, you wouldn't have this type of these gains that whatchamacallit, that would happen if we didn't have these maps. Right. I mean,
look at Susan Wilds, right? Susan Wilds' race. I mean, I don't think that race could have been won on the previous maps.
Yeah. So Matt Briette, in his op-ed from the Wall Street Journal a few weeks ago, said, if Pennsylvania gives Democrats a House majority this November, pundits and media will take credit anti-Trump sentiments. Instead, Democrats should send thank you notes to Pennsylvania's government unions. And he was specifically talking about Democrat or the unions investing in the 2015 elections when we had 3 open seats on the Supreme Court, and the Democrats swept. But yeah, this is what happens when you invest in long-term gains.
Well, not just right. I mean, again.
I mean, he's right, and yes,
that's what I'm going to say. Yep. Hey, he's dead on. Because let's remember is that the unions, like Pennsylvania's, especially public sector unions, but Pennsylvania unions, did a lot of the heavy lifting on campaigning for those Pennsylvania Supreme Court seats.
Yes, but it wasn't the unions who brought up. I mean, and also like the benefits of having this Supreme Court, a Supreme Court that protects workers' rights.
Right.
This is what we have a Supreme Court that said, you know what? No, the maps that you drew were bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
everyone knew they were
else
bullshit.
Can see, right.
And, they got challenged, and we had Connor Lamb wouldn't have happened.
Yep.
Right? I mean, you wouldn't have Susan Wild, you wouldn't have Christie Houlihan all winning these races. We went from 0 women and 17 white guys in our whole entire delegation to having 4 women now in our delegation.
Yep.
Before that, there was only 1 woman in the delegation.
Yep.
Madeline Dean, Christie Houlihan, Susan Wild. Who else am I forgetting? We have 4, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I forget who else, but we have 3. I'm not sure. I'm not thinking straight right now. But I mean, this is the importance of having a actual Supreme Court and reversing these voter suppression tactics through gerrymandering.
Right.
I mean, this is what the 2011-2012 session was all about in the State House. Voter ID, gerrymandering, getting suppress these tactics so then they can go forward with, the anti-union right to work legislation and stuff like that.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, because Madeline Dean is a statewide thing. And by the way, while we're thinking about her, is that, shout out to her. I hope she's feeling okay, because I don't know if people heard she got in a car accident the night of the election, right? Fortunately, not I say fortunately, there was speculation at first, but she actually got in an accident with a supporter of hers who was devastated by this. But apparently she was okay and everything. When the news first broke, I was like, oh my God, what does this mean? But it was, apparently she's okay, but hope that there's a quick recovery, not too much, too bad in district, because she has been great. So,
yeah. So I think I should move on to my predictions that I made a couple months ago.
Yeah, do it up, man. Do it up. Let's see.
So I had Wolf. I'm looking at it right now on my board. Wolf by 17. Check.
Wait, how much? No, you got to give us the number to numbers. So you said Wolf by 17. What did Wolf win by?
17.
Oh, you didn't even need to, because it was right on. I see.
I said Casey by 17. Mm-hmm. He won by 13 or 14.
Mm-hmm. A little optimistic there. A little optimistic.
I said the Democrats would get 10. Democrats would get 15 House seats. They got 10.
All right.
A little bullish. And then I said the Democrats, the Senate Dems, would get 5 or 6 seats. They got 5.
There you go.
And they almost had 7 or 8, which would have been unbelievable.
It was close. It was close. It was almost there.
Yeah. I mean, and for having seats that were having the 2 statewides pretty much decided months ago, it shows you the importance of still going out and voting anyway.
Yep.
Because these local races and these down ballots matter. Unfortunately, Pat Browne survives.
And that was so close. I really thought Pinsley was
one of those closer races. So funny thing about that is I filed a right to know request for Pat Browne's expenses.
Yeah.
A week before. couple weeks before the election, and they gave me a 30-day extension, and then they sent me the receipts the following day.
So, do you want to disclose?
Yeah, because I'm going to write a story about this. Senator Pat Browne spent $1,850 on registration for the ALEC conference in 2017. And I'm not going to say much more about that.
I'm just going to leave it at that for now.
Yeah.
Leave it at that for now.
But, also 13 of the 16 Democrats who got elected were all signed on to the We the People platform, which was run from people by the Keystone Policy Network and the Keystone or the Budget and Policy Center. This is a project they were working on throughout the year, which was calling for higher wages, like a free public higher education and stuff like that. And 13 of the Democrats who won their races signed on to that. So that's a good one. One of the pickups, Katie Muth won.
Big time. Good for her.
She took out Rafferty. Did you read the piece in Salon from the Center of Public Integrity?
I read part of it. Yeah.
I mean, that was just an awesome rundown.
Yep.
No, I mean, I'm optimistic of seeing what happens here in Pennsylvania in the future. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I feel I would be remiss from mentioning the win by Brian Fitzpatrick in the PA first, since it's been one of my little hobby horses here throughout the election. It was an extraordinarily close race in which Wallace was ahead for a portion of the night. Fitzpatrick ended up winning 51.5% to Wallace's 48.5%. One has to wonder if that seat could have been flippable had PSEA and the PAA-AFL-CIO not thrown in resources behind Fitzpatrick in that race. So you basically had two different kind of sets of union groups working against each other in that race, as opposed to actually an approach to understanding what power is in politics by having one more seat in the House that would be blue. But, luckily, this would have been a very different conversation right now had the Democrats lost the House by one seat. Then Sean would have left the room by now, and I would be ranting and raving about what these endorsements meant.
I'd come back in 10 minutes.
Exactly.
But one of the things I was going to say, Democrats had some major pickups in Delaware and Chester County too.
Yeah,
the suburbs of Philadelphia. One of the people who showed up was whatchamacallit, who got defeated was McGarrigle. Republican endorsed by the unions. The day of his election, Scott Wagner showed up to his polling place and posted a picture of him online. And it was like a little mob thing, like the kiss of death.
Yeah, right.
Did he get the bouquet of poinsettias?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Give him a little black rose in his pocket. Yeah. That's awesome.
So I have someone's tweeting after I tweeted a story about the youth vote. So I mean, in 2010, Democrats lost 700 seats. In those couple of elections, they pretty much cut that in half. They picked up 323 seats on Tuesday in state houses across the country, which is great.
Yeah, pretty cool, man.
Yep.
Pretty cool, I have to say.
And this does a lot for setting up the redrawing of the maps in 2022. We're gonna have fair maps. We're gonna have fair state maps, which were gerrymandered as all hell. And it's gonna be. This is a three cycle process at this point.
Indeed. So let me ask you this. We didn't really talk about this before the show today, but if you're kind of looking forward, right, based upon what we've seen, I'm thinking specifically Pennsylvania legislature here and kind of agendas. If you start to think about the kind of movements we could expect to see from Pennsylvania Democrats, at least at the state level. Do you have any sense of that about, in terms of legislative agenda, organizing stuff, or things that you'd be looking out for?
I mean, Democrats have a mandate, at least, to push forward with like raising the minimum wage and stuff like that. I mean, 13 of the 16 Democrats who got elected signed on to those platforms. I mean, will the Republicans respond? No, but it's going to be something where you can just hammer them on and stuff like that.
Well, because it's interesting because you've got a group of Democrats coming forward, right? That are, I mean, you got Sarah Innamorato, you got Summer Lee, you got Linda Fiedler, you got Katie Muth, you got, real kind of activists and kind of folks that are going to have, they're going to be in a position to have some influence, I think. Plus, those folks kind of joining, more kind of seasoned, kind of like progressives within the caucus too as well. And it just makes me, again, I don't know. I mean, that's why I'm asking you, because it makes me wonder kind of what's going to be possible, and will there actually be some active strategizing going forward?
It will be interesting. I think internal strife might be an issue.
Yeah, I think so.
Because, their next goal is to hold on to the incumbency. So there's these Democrats that got elected will have to fall in line somehow.
What do you mean by that?
They can't go in rocking the boat in Harrisburg. I think it just. Through...
I see. I mean, incumbency for themselves. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about something. I got you. Okay.
But it will be interesting.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like, because look, I mean, there's you know how like politics works, right? So there's the campaigning that you see out there. There's a legislative agenda and all this, but then there's also, that sense of kind of building power within this. Like, and here's the kind of thing that's going through my mind. I look at the again, right back for your interviews, right? Right back for your PA Progressive Summit interviews with Sarah Innamorato, Linda Fiedler, and Summer Lee, right? And the fact that it was the three of them together when you interviewed them, and that the three of them were in constant contact and social media sharing and things like this, and mutual support all throughout the campaign, right? I can see that kind of being able to be the basis for a real fruitful working relationship in terms of strategizing about how to kind of expand some of their work, right? And and again, you think about Chris Rabb, right? And the work that he's been doing, and he's been kind of in many ways kind of a lone figure in some ways, in terms of the aggressiveness of his progressiveness, and so it's going to be interesting to see what is going to happen in terms of the organization internally for kind of building, a platform within the legislature there.
I mean, I would like to see a formation of a progressive caucus.
No, that's exactly. I mean, that goes through my mind. And it's like that's exactly, yeah. Yeah.
I think it's going to be more of outside inside type of things too. I think activists should be more emboldened to push for these reforms now.
Well, that's just it, right? I mean, I think about, because I always come back to, where do we fit in, right? And I think about maintaining the kind of activist connection with those legislatures, and I think about ways of kind of supporting their work, right? Ways that we kind of get out there, and ways that and I know this is going to be true for the three that I keep on mentioning. I mean, for Sarah Innamorato, Summer Lee, and Linda Fiedler, is that they're going to already be in touch with their constituents and their base and the activists that have been around that, and so that's going to be an interesting strategy going forward about showing up not just for protest against something, but to get behind certain initiatives.
Yeah, no, it'll also be interesting. I mean, it's going to be self-preservation because there's also the machine that will still try to go after them in 2 years or 4 years.
Yeah, that's true.
And try to take back those seats and give it to the building trades or something like that.
Yep.
So
we'll see. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens with with some of the unions there too as well, because folks that didn't originally get behind some of their their campaign initially they might find that they've got allies there that they're going to want to help build for the long term. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. So.
I want to go back to just real quickly. You were at the Capitol, like for the Mueller investigation. The protests against the Protect Mueller stuff last night, and you kind of already mentioned in our first segment today that there was a pretty good turnout there. So what kind of conversation you have with people about that? I mean, what was the energy on the street from activists that showed up?
So I ran into people I used to bartend for there. Mm-hmm. Customers I knew who, it's pretty much like the messaging was president's not above the law type of thing. And I think it's a good pushback because it's like, this is where resistance is going to need to happen. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not like hashtag the resistance, but this is where, we're going to have to keep this drumbeat going, or Trump, as he tries to consolidate more authoritarian rule.
Right.
And that's what I think the issue is. It was upbeat. There were lock him up chants going on last night. So, hey, you reap what you sow.
No, exactly. I was impressed to see the footage that Seth Goldstein had taken from Doylestown. If you said there were about 150 people at the Capitol. I was
not expecting it. I thought maybe like 10, 15 people would show up, and I turned the corner and just saw everyone on that lower plaza, the steps. I'm like, oh wow, this is like. These were neighbors of mine who showed up who aren't really politically active that work in town. These were some staffers and stuff like that. It seemed like it was also a lot of people from the community, the Harrisburg community, the Midtown community there, and also people from around the region showed up.
Well, that's what was interesting at Doylestown, because I think Doylestown may have even had more people show up than Harrisburg. And this is in Brian Fitzpatrick's district, right? Which is, I think, is really interesting. If you're talking about any leverage going forward there, now that you've got the House thing, it's like, this is Fitzpatrick's, opportunity to shine as his, number 3 most bipartisan, blah, 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 blah. But to see that many people show up in Doylestown, and Doylestown has been, I'm telling you, has been something else in terms of the activism in the streets there, right from the get-go. So.
And it's also the type of thing, you had former people, like self-identified former Republicans show up.
Yep.
Which is a pretty big deal. Like the Democrats are going to be getting more liberal and progressive. And I think that's not going to be an issue, because I feel like, the Democrats shouldn't be backing off of their positions of Medicare for all, free public higher education. You saw in Pennsylvania that 52% of residents support some sort of socialized healthcare. You are going to get Republicans to start jumping on board with your party platform simply because they are fed up with the Republicans. And you know what? I think there's a messaging opportunity with these newer people coming into the party and saying that they support this stuff.
Well, that's the thing, and I think that the struggle is going to be.
We shouldn't moderate our voices because of
that's exactly what
the incoming former Republicans. No, we should go forward and offer actual policy alternatives.
Right, there's enough of these kind of never Trumpers out there, and enough people that say they don't like Trump and they want to do all that kind of stuff. And I don't think that we should kowtow to those voices, right? And to kind of moderate positions, exactly as you said. And it's like, look, if you guys really want to reclaim your Republican Party and you want to do that stuff, you go found your third party. Right, you can't stomach becoming a Democrat and that kind of stuff, and then getting on board with a kind of progressive move of the Democratic Party. Then maybe Republicans need to go out there and establish their third party, right? And on the principles that they say that they stand for, right? Because it's like, right now, if you stay in the Republican Party and you continue to support this agenda from the Trump thing, you are part of that problem. So I don't know, either kind of get aboard the next wave of the American century, whatever you want to say, or, I don't know, figure out the party politics of building your, non-Trumper party. I don't know what to say.
I mean, there are a lot of canvassers out there in the southeastern part of the state this weekend and in other parts who are saying, they've run into Republicans say, yeah, I'm never voting for a Republican again because of where the party's going. And these are people voting for DSA members to become their next representative.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm all in with that. I mean, welcome aboard. Welcome aboard for that train.
It's, to me, it's more voting. You fight these things out in the primary and you punch a straight Democratic ticket, which I have no problem punching the straight ticket down.
As we saw with your little memes that you're playing, let everybody know. All right, man. Anything else going on around the state?
Nope.
All right. Well, everybody, we'll be coming up just in a few minutes with today's, you guessed it, This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. For the past 7 years, Raging Chicken Press has brought pull-no-punches, progressive reporting and commentary to the interwebs. Our long-form investigative pieces, stories that no-access journalist wants to touch, or rollicking weekly podcasts strive to advance progressive movements and perspectives rooted in the struggles happening across the country or down the street. We've broken national stories and caused our share of discomfort in the halls of power. If we want a progressive future, we need progressive media. And you can help support Pull No Punches, homegrown progressive media today. Become a member of Raging Chicken Press for as little as $5 a month. Simply go to patreon.com/rcpress and choose your membership level. We need to make sure to keep the movement in the media and the media in the movement. Best way you can do that is to become a member of Raging Chicken today by going to patreon.com/rcpress. Thank you for your energy, your encouragement, and your support. Keep up the fight.
Hello, everyone. I'm an English artificial intelligence anchor. This is my very first day in Xinhua News Agency. My voice and appearance are modeled on Zhang Zhao, a real anchor with Xinhua. The development of the media industry calls for continuous innovation and deep integration with the international advanced technologies.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the New World Order. That was the first AI news anchor unveiled by China this week, in which basically is kind of a little bit unnerving, to be honest with you, especially in the original message that was released by this news anchor. It was debuted at this conference that is. What's it called? It's called the China's World Internet Conference, which is kind of supposed to be China's Davos for the tech sector. But The Guardian reported upon this, and the Chinese state news agency, reading for The Guardian right now, agency Xinhua, this week introduced its newest members of its newsroom, AI anchors who will report tirelessly all day, every day from anywhere in the country. Chinese viewers were greeted with a digital version of the regular Xinhua news anchor named Hua. I'm horrible at Chinese names. The anchor, wearing a red tie and a pinstripe suit, nods his head in emphasis, blinking and raising his eyebrows slightly. Quote, "Not only can I accompany you 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, I can be endlessly copied and presented at different scenes to bring you the news," he says. And the English-speaking version says the development of the media industry calls for continuous innovation and deep integration with the international advanced technologies. I look forward to bringing you brand new news experience. There we go, Sean. It is the New World Order, an AI news anchor. It was only a matter of time before we start seeing the professions, especially things like news anchors, being kind of automatized and computerized, and having that labor stripped away and turned into the control of the state. So that's all good.
If that's just not an argument for UBI, I don't know what is.
Exactly, right? Exactly not. Well, and that's a great point. I hadn't even made that connection before. And it's like, that's an awesome point, because it's like, here you go. We keep on hearing that there's going to be the kind of professions, right, that have supposedly been immune from technological displacement and the coming robot revolution. Well, here you go. We have got AI that's becoming so effective. And reading more of that article is basically, you see basically what can happen is that you've got a whole bunch of people that are basically, putting in text messages to this, to this AI anchor. So you could basically be paying people slave wages to kind of like input the news and input stuff like this in order to have this presenter. And the presenter is, it doesn't have to be paid, doesn't have to be fed, doesn't need a break, right? And so everything recedes to behind the scenes work. I mean, it's very similar to what happened when, in a lot of professional contacts, like within higher education, for example, like I remember in the right about the 1990s or so, having this conversation with this guy, Jim Zabrowski, who was kind of my mentor at Syracuse University, and him saying, it's like, he's just in the time that the past few years, it used to be that, if you had to figure out, you had to mail something, or you had to kind of communicate something, you contacted the secretary, and the secretary would kind of put this together and would send it to there and would kind of mitigate this stuff. Now we all have computers on our desks, and we're being asked to do that ourselves, right? It's that the slow replacement of skilled labor with unskilled labor, kind of embedded in the machine. So here you go. It's the next wave, folks. Right, and I was going to say, and if you think that is going to be sequestered out there in just China, you're nuts. With all that. Meanwhile, I want to give a shout out to this really cool article by Kim Stanley Robinson. Kim Stanley Robinson, as you know from hearing me talk about it, he's the author of the Mars trilogy, and just one of my all-time favorite science fiction writers. Probably some of the best understandings of, say, politics and the dynamics of the way that kind of colonization works, and the way that capitalism kind of has developed and continues to develop in ways that kind of maximize exploitation. All sorts of great stuff. You just can't beat him. But he's got this amazing piece in Commune magazine. It's called Dystopias Now. And he starts out like this, and I'm just going to read just a couple things from it. It says, dystopias are the flip side of utopias. Both of them express feelings about our shared future. Utopias express our social hopes. Dystopias are social fears. And there are a lot of dystopias around these days, and this makes sense because we have a lot of fears about the future. Down a little bit. By the definition, dystopias today seem almost like the metaphorical lens of the science fictional double action. They exist to express how this moment feels, focusing on fear as a cultural dominant. A realistic portrayal of a future that might really happen isn't really part of the project. That lens of the science fiction machinery is missing. The Hunger Games trilogy is a good example of this. Its depicted future is not plausible, not even logically possible. That's not what it's trying to do. What it does very well is portray the feeling of the present for young people today, heightened by exaggeration to the kind of dream or nightmare. To this extent, this is typical. Dystopias can be thought of as a kind of surrealism. And then part of what he's arguing in this whole thing is that this is the essential part of what we need for this kind of utopian vision. And by utopian, it doesn't mean like things that could never ever happen, but it's that horizon. And this is kind of going back to what our discussion was during the first part about Democrats coming in and kind of reclaiming the agenda about what's possible, a legislative agenda about this future, which a lot of these new candidates that were elected to office are kind of bringing forward. So if you get a chance, and because I'll try to put it in the show notes here, check it out. And again, this is kudos, shout out to Jamie Peck from the Majority Report, because she tweeted about this, and I was like, it says Kim Stanley Robinson. Okay, I'll read it, and it was a really good piece. So that's my little sci-fi stuff. No, not so much space news, even though there's some great stuff going on right now. We're too tired, and Sean is he's already scrolling through his machine. You can hear it. That's what that rumbling is. That Sean kind of scrolling through his feed. So. Cool news out of kind of Utica, New York. I would have more for you on this one, but right this morning, I don't know why, I do all my notes, and there's this social bookmarking tool called Digo, and allows you to kind of save web pages and do highlights and stuff on them. And that's kind of where I do all my weekly readings. You can do it on your phone and save it, blah, blah, blah. Well, their website is down, so I don't have my access to all my notes. And Sean is very, very happy about that, because it means that I'm not going to be talking about some things that he would just rather zone out for. So, so that's good. But one of the things is that Utica, New York, where I grew up, is the home of the FX Matt's brewery, or the Saranac Brewery. It's kind of all one. It's where it brews Utica Club, and it was the brewery that was the first one to brew beer following Prohibition. That's kind of its like claim to fame and its kind of lore. And once the order was lifted on brewing, brewing beer, like the brewery basically started selling beer like the next day, right? So I don't know about you, Sean. I'm not involved so much in the beer industry, but how long does beer usually take to make?
4 weeks for an ale, about 2 months for a lager.
There you go. Right. In other words, right. This is why I say when I grew up in a mob town, this is perfect. Exactly why. Right. So the brewery never stopped. Right. Never ever stopped. So, but apparently what they're doing. Good. I found the article. Just gonna have a little bit of it. So I'm just going to read you a bit from this as my shout out to my hometown. Say a shipment of giant brewing tanks from Germany is en route to Utica this week as part of a major expansion to the historic FX Max Saranac Brewery in Utica. The tanks arrived on November 2nd at the port of Ogdensburg and will be trucked to Utica. The shipment, which is port officials describe as stainless steel aging and fermenting tanks, should arrive at the brewery just after Thanksgiving. And the goal is to modernize the brewhouse and expand the capacity of the brewery, which was founded by a German immigrant, FX Matt, in 1888. Right, it used to be called the West End Brewery. So that they're going to have, how many people are listening from Utica? Not very many, but if you're ever up in Utica, if you go down by the brewery, it's like, this is really, Utica's been a long story of kind of a dying industrial town. I mean, it's been part of the Rust Belt. Most of the industry first moved south. Like we had all the textile industries, silverware industries first moved to the south, and then moved to Mexico, then moved overseas, and left a huge part of the town, boarded up and everything for the longest period of time. And the brewery's always been there, producing really bad beer. But like the Utica Club, for example, oh man, the next day stinks after Utica Club. But it's always been a fixture, and they've stuck around and they've stuck to it. And that whole area around the brewery now, thanks in large part to the kind of craft beer kind of revolution in so many ways, has been becoming slowly revitalized. And you've got, and not only is it because of the brewery or the craft beer stuff, but because the new wave of immigrants that came in the 1980s and 1990s, Vietnamese immigrants, Bosnian immigrants, especially Bosnian immigrants, right? Their kind of kids, right, have now been growing up in this area, and and some of the ones who kind of came here and fled the wars in Serbia, came to Utica and are now establishing restaurants and breweries and bars, and so this whole area has begun to kind of become rekindled around this brewery. It's also become the central part. Is Utica runs this Boilermaker race every year. It's a marathon. Half marathon, I guess, but it used to be just this tiny little thing, and now you get racers from all over the world. You get Kenyans typically always come and win it, right? They're really good at it, but it's just been this massive thing that's geared around the brewery, and to see them expanding now is just kind of it warms the heart a little bit for someone who grew up in Utica, New York, to see this brewery has kind of stuck through it and has kind of really been kind of a center part for kind of redevelopment in the area. So kudos to them. I'm still not the huge fan of Utica Club, although I did buy a Utica Club last time I was home. So there you go. Last thing I got is about this week in my new hometown in Percy. Free Will has got a new bottle release, and this is going to be the Owl. Ollie. It's a sour brown ale aged in oak casks. Comes in at 7.7%, and this is the one that won the 2018 World Beer Cup silver medal. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. And that will be available on Sunday in both tap rooms. It'll be in both the 375 milliliter and 750 milliliter bottles. It's pretty good. So I'll give you it's a Foundry and barrel aged sour brown ale that is blended from up to 5-year-old vintages, dark fruit notes, a plum red currant with malty caramel overtones, and a pleasantly sour finish. So it's a cool place. It's a really good beer. Go check it out if you want to go pick it up. That's my latest from Free Will. And I was saying to Sean, because I've been sick this week and stuff, it's been amazing to see that Free Will has just been cranking out new beers more faster than I could drink them. I mean, I've been too tired and not feeling so well for a while now. So I have not tasted very many of their beers lately, to be honest with you. So
I know their sour game's getting really good.
Man, it's been
I think Ollie took silver at the GABF this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
So.
There you go. There you go. So what else news? What's the news in blue, Sean?
Nothing much. I ended up getting a $16 shot of whiskey last night.
See, I didn't bring it up. You said you didn't want to talk about it, but here you go.
Yeah.
Sean was trying to get the feel of what it's like to live in the big leagues.
No, more like I just took a shot in the dark and picked a whiskey, and it was a Scotch Oban 14. It was smoky, and I could tell right from the instant. I was like, "Fuck, this is going to be a lot of money."
Was that good?
No, not really.
Oh, it wasn't.
It was okay.
Oh, okay. So it was okay, but then, so what was the take that this is going to be very expensive when you first sip?
Like the smoky peatiness of it and stuff like that.
Oh, smoky peat. That's the giveaway.
Well, it definitely didn't taste like Dewar's.
Yeah.
Or or McAllen's.
Yeah.
12.
Right.
Which I tried that last week, and McAllen's 12.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a nice clean Scotch. This was very smoky and on the peaty side. I was just like, fuck.
I love the smoky peaty stuff. I really do.
I might get some Lafrague when my check comes in.
You've had that before, right?
I have not.
It's great. It's like, well, I mean, again, it's not the kind of stuff you go crazy with, right? Because it is like I've said before, it's just like smoke in a bottle. And it is super, super peaty. But it's well worth it. It's well worth it.
I did get myself a bottle of Woodford Rye this week, which was really good.
Nice, man. Nice.
Yeah.
I believe I still have a picture of that that you posted about that too as well, right?
Maybe.
Exactly.
So I bought the Woodford Rye to celebrate the election night with, and because I've been making some old fashions, and when the one point in the house, the news coverage, where the news does a really good job at hyping up the horse race,
right?
And there was an hour there. I was like, oh man, the Democrats aren't going to take back the House, and this is just going to fall apart. And so I decided to not. I held off on really cracking that open for a while, and I just ended up having a shot of whiskey and a couple beers, and that was it.
Yeah, I think I missed the whole celebration enjoyment concern thing. I was I have this bottle of I even forget what it is now, but it's from it's oh my god, I'm forgetting their name. That's awful. It's Woodland Farm Brewery up in Utica that I got last year. That it's just been just sitting. I just let it sit, and I said, you know what? And I kind of was looking at it a few weeks ago. I said, oh, you know what? I'll open that on election night to be perfect. It's been aging for over a year. I'll sit there and have that. But I literally got done with my 9:30 class on Tuesday. Actually, 15 minutes before my class ended, and all of a sudden, I swear, it felt like I got hit by a truck. And I went in my office. I had about an hour break. And it was I felt like I was going to throw up. I felt horrible. And then I came home. I was sick for the day. So I came home and I voted, and I felt horrid. So I was I came home, and I was going to I watched for a little bit, and I said, I just got to go to bed. And I just kind of listened to my ear, and I fell asleep. So I'd wake up periodically, though, because fever dreams. But look at my what were the results and so on. So anyways,
yeah,
that's where we're at. All right, anything else, news and blues for the good of the order?
That's about it.
All right, man. Well, hey, good hanging out today. And now that we've got past the election, start looking for the long-term road ahead. Where we go from here, what's the next action? I'm sure that the Trump administration is not going to give us more than, about 15 minutes to rest before we've got a new squirrel to follow. So, well, here we go. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. I want to thank everybody. Remember, become a member of Raging Chicken. Go to patreon.com/RC Press today. We'll talk to you next week. See ya!
I want to play for you what the Chuck Schumer, who of course is the minority leader in the Senate, had to say on this today. Take a listen.
We would hope, if there's a constitutional crisis, that our Republican colleagues would join us in thwarting the president from creating that crisis. We'll see.
I just want to say there are people who are watching that clip and they are screaming at the television, have you not been paying attention for the last 2 years?